And welcome, ladies and gentlemen, back to the Valley of the Judged. I am your one and only gaming monk, better known as Mildra, and with me are my two good brothers in the temple. We have our resident three-eyed master of dad jokes, good brother Joe.
Hello, everyone.
And the man who is possibly the worst sky pirate you've ever heard, but you have heard of him.
Oh,
good brother Sizer.
Ahoy and avast me hearty. We got 2026 off the starboard bow now, or maybe I don't know. We're in the sea, we're in the sky. I don't know. But we're in it. 2026 is here. Happy New Year to everybody.
Oh yeah. After a bit of chaos.
2026 ho.
Yep.
Yeah, there we go.
After a bit of chaos on the previous night and a bit of chaos overtime when it comes to the Hangover shit show, we are back at it with a brand new season of the Valley of the Judged. And I feel like this is going to be a nice palate cleanser after everything that happened with Phantasy Star, which I'm hoping to revisit that with Ferb, talking about how one might adapt Phantasy Star into Legend Edition.
Yeah.
And unlike the official book, we won't be limited to just the original quartet and online. We also will actually be able to put mags in the thing.
Maybe that'll be one that I want to check out. Maybe that will sell me on this franchise. Finally.
But for this one, we are venturing back into the wonderful world of Group SNE for what was originally called Apotheosis of Ouka, but is known in the front as Ouka Houshin. This is a Qianxia TTRPG that was done by Group SNE in 1994. There was one expansion set up, and there were more planned, but 95 is right around the time that Monster Collection started doing gangbusters for Group SNE and Katakawa, and so it got the lion's share of the attention. Basically, from the mid-90s all the way up to the early 2000s, TCG was eating everybody's lunch in the Japanese tabletop scene. Then it just suddenly died in 2002. And even the people over at Group SNE don't know why. I have my guesses. One of them being too much too soon. I.e. the eating everybody's lunch thing got a little bit too aggressive and a backlash happened. But obviously I'm still outside looking in. I'm more drawing a parallel to to the blitz of different card games in the early 2000s and when that died a death.
Hmm.
But
Yeah, I have to admit, not a lot of the TCGs that I dabbled in at that time are still around.
I think the longest holdout was Legend of the Five Rings, which is still around just as an LCG instead of a TCG.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, I prefer the LCG format more. Where that idea of you have a neutral ground and it's more about how adept you are at understanding the mechanics rather than who built the best deck coming in.
Yeah.
But Qianxia, for those who are unaware, means immortal hero. And this is where outright magic gets used and the more really out there aspects of martial fiction. The most famous example, of course, being Journey to the West.
Mm-hmm.
I know some people have erroneously referred to Journey to the West as a wuxia story. Given the stuff that Sun Wukong alone gets up to, I think it's disqualified from that.
Though Journey of the West is used quite a bit in both wuxia and sanxia.
But wuxia means martial hero, and you tend to not see as much of the magic part of the equation. Though something else to note, and this is something that I find fascinating and is also carried over into other mediums, is the idea of the line between martial and magic being blurry at best, which is an interesting contrast when you look at a lot of fantasy in the West, where it's like there's this very hard line between a martial character and a magic character.
Mm-hmm.
There are exceptions to the rule, of course, but when it comes,
Generally, you would think of those as gishes, like your Spellblade or what have you.
And I've seen it also. I feel like that's also led to that argument of, oh, fighters aren't supposed to be powerful, which, by the way, is bullshit. And you look at the quote unquote mage archetype in a lot of anime, a lot of Qianxia, and a lot of them would fall into the category of gishes. And that includes almost every single character in a shonen battle manga you've seen in the last 50 years. Like when you really stop and think about it.
That's for sure. Like Goku springs immediately to mind there, like, shooting Kamehamehas while he's, rapid fire punching and flash stepping around.
And, well, Son Goku is the Japanese name of Sun Wukong. So there you go.
Yep.
But now, obviously, we're going to be going through the player's handbook and then dipping a little bit into the Game Master's handbook. There is a third book that is in the works that's being translated, but it isn't fully translated quite yet. Emma brings up Edward Elric, which, yeah, it was funny as hell seeing somebody, whenever I'd see people try to adapt Edward Elric into any edition of the world's most litigious role-playing game. And more recently, some people had found my comment on Wandering Blades, and the question was brought up of whether or not OSR can do wuxia or qianxia. I would argue no. And it mostly has to do with character flaws.
Right. I've not played a lot. Not played a lot of OSR, but I will say the typical the reputation it has is more hardcore, more death comes easily, that kind of a thing. Which, when you're dealing with immortal characters who can still die, uh, it doesn't seem like death should come quite as easily to that group or that
Well,
particular kind of character.
a big reason why I say it is a lot of the discourse within that crowd is so focused on what you're quote unquote supposed to do.
Hmm.
And it and there and as well as the purity problem within the OSR and BroSR. But we open up with a few very nice two-page spreads. We're saying a contest of skills, a test of abilities. Even the young immortals are like this. The 8 taverns of immortal arts are all equally matched. And some of the characters you see here are going to be pre-gens later on in the book, which I always like that kind of thing. It's something you see a lot in Japanese tabletop, of having a handful of mascot characters that are used as pre-gens that aren't outright named. I know White Wolf would do something similar, but they would name those characters, which kind of defeats the purpose.
Just a bit.
Though they compete in skill as if in play, they shake the earth and astonish the heavens. Truly, the immortal arts are to be feared. In the immortal realm, there exist immortal treasures, which become invincible weapons and armor, or allow one to wield techniques without training, or grant unexpected powers. Thus, it is possible to control the Ouka. However, never forget, should you wield an immortal treasure beyond your station, calamity will befall you. And we have a few examples of these immortal arts, like summoning spirits, goo alchemy, which is a deadly bee weapon. Bees, my god.
Not the bees!
Not the bees!
Yeah.
The two aspects of the fire style. Transcendental whistling. And
Oh god, it's not the whistling.
And of course, good old feng shui. Each of them having 3 tags, 3 one-word tags, which I feel like those are going to be important later. And then we do have a handful of sample characters. Don't expect the whole book to be full color like this. This is still a Japanese tabletop game in the 90s. And Monk and Mario asks, would Space Marines be Chansha? Borderline.
That's kind of difficult.
Like, it's straddling the line between the two.
I don't know. It seems like one of the main things is like an Eastern aesthetic to this genre.
Not necessarily, because there are Deathblade and several others have released wuxia and cultivation works that take place in other styles. Like there's some I've seen that do space opera. There's some I've seen that do cyberpunk. As far as their particular setting, the issue is that there isn't really an equivalent of cultivation. The closest thing to cultivation in the Warhammer universe would be currying favor with chaos, which that's one side of the equation, even though all magic is chaos magic. But that's a rabbit hole for another day. Now, I will note, I appreciate the fact that the PDF has proper bookmarks and a hyperlinked table of contents. Always nice. That's something that I do find amusing when it comes to the characters here is the true identity of several of the characters. Like Princess Rura's true identity being the incarnation of a fox, because of course we have to have that. Or
Get that Kitsune spirit in there.
Mhm. Or how Shu Genji his true identity is a koto that was cherished and well used.
Yeah, I keep on thinking that like items gaining a spirit and becoming humanoid was more of a Japanese thing, but yeah, they got that from China,
Yeah,
not the other way around.
it's a very chicken and egg situation. But then obviously we have the table of contents proper, then a nice prologue. I do like that they put in these little translations of names in the text for it. I remember Aquid, one of the translators, stating that it was tricky to do some of these because he's more familiar with Japanese than Chinese. So he's translating Japanese words for Chinese things.
Okay, Japanese were like kind of like how like Son Goku is like the Japanese version of a Chinese thing.
Yeah.
But
Mhm.
yeah,
Mhm.
okay.
But after a bit of a short story covering a prologue, which is a very White Wolf kind of thing to do, we then have a way to introduce what a TTRPG is through Ryu and Yuko's Helping Hand Theater, which part of me wishes this was this had an image of hand puppets.
Yeah, or like the chibis that you would see at the end of some anime episodes.
Mm-hmm. But you do have some back and forth. But first, what is a role-playing game? Obviously. Then the meaning of the rulebook. Where they go into what sort of affair Ouka Houshin is. So I think this part I will read out. As we mentioned, an RPG progresses through the scenario prepared by the game master. The player's decisions and random chance. Going into it, as stated in the beginning, Ouka Houshin presents itself as a TTRPG and depicts a world different from our reality. Immortals use immortal arts to perform great deeds, and various fantastical monsters can only be seen in this fictional world live and breathe within it. Even in this world, there are laws. Immortal arts are not omnipotent, and there are no guarantees of success. They have characteristics and limitations. Just because someone is an immortal doesn't mean they can do anything. Each has its own characteristics and limitations. For example, some may excel in strength, while others may not be as blessed. Those who excel in strength can deal greater damage with their weapons than those who lack strength. However, with training and experience, even those with lesser natural talent can become capable fighters. To ordinary humans, a tiger would be a terrifying monster. However, the immortals featured in Ouka Houshin can fight on equal terms with tigers or even surpass them. And the rest of that is just going into the fact that even a starting character is leagues above an average human or even a skilled human. Then what the split volumes, what you need. This is using a 2d6 setup, much like Sword World, but there is no connection between Sword World's systems and this game. Much like what happened with... There were a fair amount of people who assumed that because they were made by the same company and both used 2d6, that Goblin Slayer and Sword World had anything in common. They are not compatible at all.
I'm not surprised there's a Goblin Slayer TTRPG.
I do remember some people looking at it and going, why didn't they use 5e for this? Which 5e doesn't have that kind of D&D doesn't have that kind of footprint in Japan. There have been attempts to do it, but they've never been consistent. It's been a case of supporting it for a few years, then nothing for a few more years, and back to supporting it again. And by the time they support it again, a new edition drops. I was a little bit pissed off that one of the more recent attempts to bring, to do more D&D in Japan involved bringing the Kara-Tur setting to Japan. I'm like, you had this the whole time and you couldn't give me that? When I've been asking for that for fucking years? But that's a whole other matter. So, also I do like this little infinite whip treasure that they put up on page 26. An immortal treasure of the 5 escapes Woodstyle. When the incantation is recited, it becomes a leather whip that can extend endlessly.
Gotcha. Like a reminiscent of like Sun Wukong's pole, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But we do go into a bit of a short story. And these short stories are throughout the book, but I'm not going to be reading them because there's nothing to dissect with them. But people who are familiar with the in-between stories and stuff like Shadowrun or any White Wolf game will be familiar with this concept. Although I think the best incarnation of it, and one that I'd probably do for Legend Edition if I had the budget, is the mini comics that were in the Exalted books, especially in 2nd edition.
Mm.
3rd edition,
Those were great.
Yeah, 3rd edition not so much, but I've stated in the past, I think 3rd edition Exalted is a case of missing the point.
Peace out.
And yes, I do consider 2nd edition Exalted to be a Chancha RPG, despite them.
I mean, it is.
They claim. I remember Rich claiming in response to somebody asking, "Why is there no Magitech in 3rd edition?" that Exalted is Wuxia and mythology, and I'm like, those two things are borderline the same.
Yeah.
Also a way to completely miss the point, dumbass. It's kind of like when someone looks at the fact that Doctor Who attracted a young audience and saying, "Oh, this show is for kids."
No.
Which I'm pretty sure Michael Gray did say at one point. And surprise, surprise, Michael Gray is the only director of the BBC who was never knighted. But going back to the whole Immortal Treasure thing, the flame-tipped spear is very nice. And that is not just me saying that because of polearm brain rot.
I love polearms.
An Immortal Treasure of the 5 elements fire style. When commanded, it wraps the spear tip in flames, causing significant damage. So, then we get into character creation proper after a lot of warm-up. Starting with ability scores. And Emma says, wasn't Exalted connected to World of Darkness? It was briefly in 1st edition, but by the time we get... but even then, the connection wasn't all that strong. I think very early on, the idea was to have it as a prequel to the World of Darkness, but that didn't really stick.
Honestly, I'm not sure why you'd really even want it to, when it comes right down to it. I understand that each of the Exalted classes was supposed to line up with one of the supernatural types, but these are two very different kinds of settings. I don't know that you need to connect every single product that your company puts out to the same continuity.
Uh, and if any, I think you can only get away with that when you have a rule set that is flexible enough to support it, and the storyteller system is not that. Now, if you want to do that with, say, the Strange or Wine, What's Old is New, those systems are a little more amenable to that concept.
Mm-hmm.
No, the Strange is all about dimension hopping, and Wine was built with three different types of adventuring genres in mind: high fantasy, space opera, and eventually modern action with the third book now. So it's a case of some can do it and some can't. I do think BattleTech insisting on using the 2d6 resolution for both the war game and the RPG was a mistake. But I've covered that elsewhere. Now, with ability scores, they range from 2 to 12. The human average is 6. They can be temporarily enhanced by immortal arts, or the power of Ki can awaken dormant abilities. This is how ability scores can go below 2, or become negative, or exceed 12. There are 9 ability scores: Strength, Physique, Dexterity, Agility, Knowledge, Perception, Will, Potential, and Charm. And we do have a nice example of the character sheet. For a character sheet in the 90s, this is actually pretty good.
Yeah, very easily readable.
Indeed.
I also like that, unlike the first Sword World character sheet, they didn't insist on one page. Or like certain other companies I know, looking at you, White Wolf. I know why there's that insistence on one page thing, but after a few sessions, that one page isn't cutting it anymore.
What I kind of don't like about it is the fact that the lines for name and effect don't really have a lot of room on them.
Yeah, though fortunately that's mainly on inventory, and it's a case of I think it was trying to maintain the same setup with Immortal Treasures. So it's a I think maybe you could address that if you got rid of the notes/others, but I'm not entirely sure that's a good idea.
Yeah.
I know it'd be
I guess you could just like add an entire other sheet for it, like, and put little shorthand notes on it.
Mm-hmm. I remember some people getting on me for the size of the character sheet in Legend Edition, but I have defended how large it is because doing that in a one-page sheet was never going to work. Plus, because of how I have my character sheet set up, it's physically impossible to use every page. Because there's about 7. It's about 7 pages long, and some of the pages are redundant to each other.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's one that covers normal advancement and one that covers full buy-in advancement, and pages for the advanced rules as well. In this, there's no way to really shrink it without losing essential info. But
I can see why so many devs fall into the one page trap, though. I almost fell into that myself with Skies, but eventually I just realized I needed to let the game be what it is and give players the space they need to write down everything that they're tracking. So
Yeah.
you just gotta.
I've seen some argue, but white box D&D was able to get away with 1 page. Yeah, and it was hell. And it was hell if you were playing a mage around that time too.
You know how you gonna with like with mage I can see like you're gonna have to do a lot of rules dives with that setup probably, but with things like vampire, like where you have a lot of disciplines that do specific things, you're not gonna get all that. You're gonna be writing those in the back of your character sheet almost certainly.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to track them all, don't want to dive into the rulebook every time you use a discipline.
And I do remember one person who got on me about multiple pages, and I was like, "Motherfucker, you have a deck of index cards for spells. Don't come at me with that shit." But so back to the core attributes. Strength represents muscular power and physical toughness. The real world example they use is sumo and professional wrestlers, which I can go with as someone who saw a certain strongman try his hand at sumo wrestling and learned it is not easy.
But I thought it was so easy. Happy go lucky.
But physique is body size, i.e., height and appropriate body weight. Dexterity is manual skill. Agility is quickness in movement. Knowledge is the amount of knowledge. And I appreciate having it as a core stat instead of having it as a bunch of individual skills. You can blame all those games from my earlier years where there were way too many individual skills. Like, do we really need to have running, jumping, climbing, swimming separate skills? And I know I've made this joke before, but it would crop up so much in the 90s and 2000s. Or do we really need the use of every single individual weapon type to be its own skill?
Absolutely not.
Because can you imagine somebody who's decent at a assault rifle but is a complete noob using a pistol?
Man, this M16 is great, but what the hell do I do with this AK-47?
Mm-hmm. And I realize that's an extreme example, but, well, that's kind of how things work with Shadowrun.
Mm-hmm.
But then perception is your ability to notice things. I'm reminded of when I had the orienteering skill, and we decided to do a sidebar saying, you're not abusing spot checks for this. You're not rolling to look around. That is stupid. And anyone who does that is stupid. I think we've all had the person who takes 1 step 5 feet, then rolls spot, then does another one spot for traps, then another one spot for traps, and just keeps going.
Well, that person has just had the unfortunate experience of playing the Tomb of Horrors. So
that is an explanation, not an excuse.
I'd like to take a 20 for every 5-foot step instead of rolling.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So then we have will, which is the strength of a character's mind. Then potential, which this is an interesting one. Immortal potential, or simply potential, represents one's aptitude as an immortal. To be an immortal, one must be blessed with potential. Characters blessed with potential can continuously learn advanced immortal arts and enhance their abilities as an immortal. Conversely, people who are not blessed with potential cannot easily become outstanding immortals. Only this ability value is 0 for ordinary people. In other words, they cannot become an immortal because they lack potential. Player characters' potential ranges from 2 to 12. It's because they have potential that they can choose the path of an immortal. I'm wondering if this would be analogous to the potential, or not potential, evolution stat that was used early on with stands. Uh,
Hmm.
Then we have.
Don't mind me, I'm just gonna stab myself with this arrow a few times.
Then we have charm, which determines the first impression of a character. So this is your diplomancer stat. I'm reminded of that one sidebar about charisma in the original DM's guide that some people took way out of context. During the Satanic Panic, they had used it to say, "Oh, D&D is venerating Hitler." Except what was actually said was, charisma is not necessarily physical attractiveness. A lot of people think it is, but it isn't.
Hmm.
Because there have been plenty of people who are charismatic, but aren't exactly the easiest on the eyes.
True.
For sure.
Mm-hmm. But after that, we have the innate attributes. These are body, quickness, wisdom, and spirit. These form the template for the character and serve as the foundation of determining ability scores. The body attribute greatly influences strength and physique. The quickness attribute influences dexterity and agility. The wisdom attribute influences knowledge and perception, and the spirit attribute influences will and potential. Charm is determined by some combination of these four attributes. You may allocate points to the four attributes as you wish under a few restrictions. Each of the four attributes must have 1 point minimum and 6 points maximum. The total of these four attributes must be 15 points. For example, a body, quickness, wisdom, spirit spread of 4, 4, 4, and 3. Naturally, if you allocate higher points, the related ability scores are higher. And of course, if you allocate lower, the related scores are lower. So we essentially have the base and then the ability scores that are actually used. So with physique and potential, they're determined by twice the innate attribute value for body and spirit. With strength, you roll 1 die and add the result to body, and that's how you get strength.
Hmm.
Of course, anytime it says 1 die or 2 die, it's always talking d6s. That is the only thing you ever roll. 1d6 or 2d6. Full stop. Now, if that
Get your little companion cubes out.
If your 1d6 roll is less than your body's innate attribute, for example, if your innate attribute is 4 and you roll 1 to 3, you can re-roll the die once. If it has a better number, you can use it. If it's lesser, you use the first one. You can only do this once. Now, dexterity, agility, knowledge, perception, and will, these are determined the same way as strength. You roll a d6, add it to the innate attribute, that's how you get those scores. The only difference is that when determining dexterity and agility, you use quickness. When determining knowledge and perception, you use wisdom. When determining will, you use spirit. And the same reroll rule that we saw earlier with strength applies here. When it comes to charm, you have to pick which of the 4 innate attributes serves as the foundation for charm. And regardless of which one you do, you determine it just like you did with strength. If you roll 1d6, add the innate attribute you used, and that determines charm. And the reroll rule still applies. Which is an interesting way to present charm, as it did go into how each one could have different representations of charm. It's
Which is more thought was put into that than I think a lot of systems do with how their character's charisma is displayed. Kind of like it. Not gonna
Mhm.
lie.
because it goes into that if you use the body innate attribute, your character's charm will lie in their muscular physique and physical beauty. If you use the quickness attribute, it's through graceful movements, sharp reflexes, or well-proportioned body. If you use wisdom, it's from quick thinking, wealth of knowledge, or skillful speech. If you use spirit, it's in other aspects. For example, facial beauty, bewitching sensuality, or inexplicably captivating cuteness that attracts others. God, the weaponized cuteness from Animaniacs immediately comes to mind. The cuteness,
Yeah.
man! I couldn't do anything! But after setting up the innate and core abilities, you have you have to pick your cave lineage. There are 8 branches and 12 types of immortal arts that immortals use. Not every immortal can freely master all of these immortal arts. At first, they begin learning specific types, gradually mastering them, eventually being blessed with opportunities to learn from different systems. A newly created immortal is essentially a novice, a beginner. Therefore, their ability with the immortal arts is not very high. They have just barely learned the basics of only one type. You have to select the single cave lineage, a system of immortal arts that you know. And we'll be getting into this later in the series when we talk about immortal arts proper. But
Cool.
but immortals do live according to a certain set of precepts, which are derived from the Great Way, and by observing them, you can accumulate virtue. The precepts differ by cave lineage. Each cave lineage has 5 precepts. You have to choose 3 of these, and you have to always be mindful of these precepts and act to uphold them. Because the idea with this is you are trying to be you're trying to follow the precepts and accumulate virtue to the point where you can break through the cycle of reincarnation. But when it comes to the cave lineages, as mentioned, each one has a set of precepts. For example, the 5 escapes, or the 5 elements. Do not defile the 5 elements you are familiar with, nor ignore them when they are being defiled. Do not hesitate to fight evil with anger. Do not hesitate to save with sorrow. Do not be consumed by the 5 emotions, but make them your strength. Value benevolence and do what you believe is good. Do not hate desires. Do not let them become your shackles, but make them your driving force. Bring happiness through love. And you have a different set of precepts for transformation/illusion, as well as summoning spirits, transcendental whistling, feng shui/divination, interdiction, goo alchemy, and malefic sympathy, or the overcoming art.
I really
What?
like this too because it like gives you some. It's almost like like different paths in World of Darkness where you have just like you do not have a conventional set of moral standards. You have to sort of uh, work with a new moral code that humans don't have, and that's interesting. You could make a lot of interesting characters with each of these sets, I think.
Mm-hmm. And remember, you pick 3 of these and add them to your sheet.
Yep.
What I see in this is a more flexible use of the whole code of behavior thing that you would see with certain character archetypes. You mentioned World of Darkness, so and especially vampires, so of course the rules of the masquerade and how your character relates to them. The different aspects of Bushido or chivalry in something like Legend of the Five Rings or Pendragon, or even the I feel like this might be the closest analog, the ideals of the Knights Radiant in Stormlight Archive.
Mm.
Which I bring up that because speaking the ideals properly is key to not only accessing the abilities of a Knight Radiant, but also advancement in them. Almost as if the oaths that you take are the thing that is literally giving you the toolkit that you have.
Yeah.
They're also known as the Immortal Words. And I'll bring up the 5 ones that were in Stormlight Archive. I am somewhat spoiling some aspects, but I'm not giving full context.
Mm-hmm.
The first ideal is shared by all the Knights Radiant. Life before death, strength before weakness, journey before destination. The second ideal for the Windrunners is, I will protect those who cannot protect themselves. The third ideal is, I will protect even those I hate so long as it is right. The fourth ideal is, I accept there will be those I cannot protect. And the fifth ideal is, I will protect myself so that I may continue to protect others.
Wait. That sounds very similar to the 3 laws from Isaac Asimov.
Yeah, I was thinking that too. It's like it definitely bears some similarities to the laws of robotics. At least in the order in which you're supposed to, like, protect. First, I think it was first you have to you can't harm a person. You have to oh geez, now I have to look it up.
You
Okay.
cannot harm. It's like obey the. No. You cannot harm a human.
I've
You
got
cannot.
it.
Okay.
1. A robot may not injure a human being or, through inaction, allow a human being to come to harm. 2. A robot must obey orders given it by human beings, except where such orders would conflict with the first law. 3. A robot must protect its own existence so long as protection does not conflict with the first or second law.
Mm-hmm.
There we go.
And a lot of the robot stories we're exploring how the interpretation of those 3 laws created unintended consequences. But again, that is a rabbit hole I'm not getting into tonight. Regardless, after you've picked 3 precepts, you have to write them down on your sheet. These are written somewhat abstractly, so infer their true meaning and act accordingly. Ignoring the precepts excessively or acting in a way that distorts their meaning will never bring good results to your character. I suppose I could also bring up the promise rules with the littlings in Household, if either of you are familiar with that game.
Mm-hmm.
Where there are certain things you have to do, and if you break those rules, you can risk dealing with horrible, horrible things. Which, in mechanics terms, it means that if you break that rule, at some point in the future, the GM may declare a certain role is automatically the worst potential result. Like you don't even get to roll; you just botch.
Yeah.
But
well, that's what you get for not obeying your precepts, I guess.
Mm-hmm. And I don't think there's a auto botch here, per se, but but I believe there is something close.
It must have already transformed or rolled out.
Yep. Robots in disguise. That's what I heard.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh. That is fair. But in something like Household, there's a massive emphasis on contracts and upholding one's word.
Hmm.
But again, those sorts of agreements that have to be followed, or codes of behavior, those are always great for helping better define characters.
And that's one of the reasons that I really like this particular aspect of it.
Mm-hmm.
Gets you into the headspace, the immortal headspace, and helps you plan out your character's priorities, more or less, and their moral codes.
Yep. But then we have skill values and endurance values. So we already covered ability scores, and the cave lineage would be. I know it'd be tempting to say that that's a class, but I feel like it's more like a starting package.
Mm-hmm.
Much in the same way that in something like Vampire, you could have two characters who are Ventru and play nothing like each other.
Mm-hmm.
Very true.
Remember, Ventru, we own the world, so you don't have to. But there are 4 skill values: attack/parry, evasion, immortal arts use, and immortal arts resistance. Among those, immortal arts use is divided into 12 types because immortal arts are divided into 12 systems. The higher the skill value, the better. 2 to 4 is a novice, 10 is world class, and at 20 there is nothing you cannot accomplish with that skill. But there is no upper boundary. The skill values of ordinary folk are 0 to 1 at most. So attack and parry, self-explanatory. This is how well you handle weapons. So this is used for both when you attack as well as when you're blocking an opponent's attack in one-on-one combat. But then we have evasion, your agility and dodging enemy attacks. In one-on-one combat, you block and deflect your opponent's attacks with a weapon, but when facing attacks from multiple enemies simultaneously, you must dodge. Then Immortal Arts use represents your proficiency with Immortal Arts. The higher this is, the more advanced Immortal Arts you can use with greater certainty. There are 8 branches of the Immortal Arts you can master. The execution of Immortal Arts differs for each type, so it's possible for your character to be an expert in one type while being a novice in another. I like that they said, rather, that's what makes a natural character. And sometimes Immortal Arts use is called use value. And then we have Immortal Arts Resistance, i.e. your resistance to Immortal Arts. When receiving Immortal Arts or similar attacks from enemies, this skill value becomes significant. Characters with high end of it can have a greater chance of avoiding the effects of an opponent's Immortal Arts. Unlike Immortal Arts use, resistance is just one value. No matter what type of Immortal Arts is used against you, you counter with just one resistance value. Sometimes, of course, this is just referred to as resistance value for the sake of simplicity. I know it would be tempting to have both of them have the different branches, I'm glad that they didn't do that.
Yeah, I guess that the reason I could see for not doing it would just be to simplify things to some degree,
Mhm.
and not have to worry about um countering, like how to counter specific arts with what specific arts. That would be a headache to have to determine.
Mm-hmm. But then we have endurance value. This is fortitude, destiny number, and willpower. So fortitude is your toughness. This is your HP or wound equivalent. The higher the fortitude, the better. The average for ordinary people is 7 to 8. Someone whose value is lower than this would be considered frail. With 10 or more, you could be considered quite tough. 20 or more belongs to the realm of heroes and first-class immortals who far exceed human levels. There is no upper limit. So, then destiny number. In the Ouka world, all life consists of two forces, yang energy and yin energy. Yang energy draws life towards the heavens, while yin energy pours it towards the netherworld. When yang and yin are in equilibrium, the struggle between those two forces can tear life itself apart. This is death. Conversely, if either yang energy or yin energy is stronger than the other, that life form becomes long-lived and less susceptible to death. This is represented by the destiny number. Destiny number ranges from 1 to 7, with higher values being better. Ordinary people have a destiny number of 1, making them extremely fragile beings. Most novice immortals have a value of 2, rarely 1 and extremely rarely 3. A destiny number of 7 belongs to inhabitants of the heaven or netherworld who are almost entirely disconnected from death. And willpower is the mental strength to face fear, basically determined by the will ability score, and can be enhanced through experience and training. The mental value represents this enhanced mental strength. The higher, the better. The mental value of an average person is around 1 to 2. At this level, they are extremely mentally weak and may suffer severe mental disorders from slight fear or shock. If it's 10 or higher, they can be considered strong-willed. Great immortals can reach values of 20 or more. So, fortitude and willpower are your physical and mental fortitude, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when it comes to determining skill values, as well as endurance values, we do have a little chart for this, which correlates the ability score that's tied to it, as well to the skill value modifier. 2 to 3 is 0, then it goes up by 1 for every few. So 4 to 5 is 1, 6 to 9 is 2, 10 to 11 is 3, and 12 is 4. Dexterity and charm ability scores don't affect skill value, so you don't have to worry about that. So essentially,
Okay.
So essentially, you would look at the ability score for that particular ability, and that's the modifier that's used for these skills. So attack and parry is 1 plus strength modifier. So obviously, if you had a strength of 6, then attack and parry would have a value of 3. Evasion is 1 plus agility modifier minus physique modifier.
Yeah, it makes sense. The bigger you are, the harder it is to dodge, I suppose.
Yep. Immortal Arts is 1 plus knowledge modifier. However, this applies only to the cave lineages you have chosen. For ones that weren't chosen, the value is 0. Immortal Arts Resistance is 1 plus perception mod. And that covers each of these skill values. Virtue value is and as well as endurance is going to be done a bit differently. The virtue value is tied to your destiny number. as mentioned before, all life is composed of yang and yin energy. The more balanced they are, the more fiercely they contend with each other, shortening your lifespan. Now, when it's biased towards one or the other, that life becomes long-lived. This is represented by the virtue value. If it's 0, it means that they are exactly balanced, indicating a short lifespan and fragile life. If it's positive, the energies are shifted towards the yang side. This is sometimes described as accumulating pure virtue. If it's negative, then it's shifted toward the yin side. This is sometimes referred to as accumulating foul karma. The goal is to accumulate pure virtue to increase that virtue value, i.e. make it more positive and escape death. Of course, one could also approach longevity or immortality by decreasing the virtue value, accumulating foul karma, and making it increasingly negative. But this is the way of evil immortals and monsters, and cannot be done by PCs. So sorry, edgelords, no doing the evil campaign this time. Everybody says they want to do an evil campaign, but nobody actually does it, in my experience.
Yeah, I've never been with a group that really wanted to do it that much. I think that's, I don't know. Not for me.
I've seen people bring it up as a thought experiment a few times, but nothing ever came of it. Regardless, the initial virtue value is the sum of the 4 skill values that was determined when determining skill values. So if evasion is negative, make sure to include that in the calculation. For example, if you have attack and parry at 4, evasion at -1, immortal arts at 3, and immortal resistance at 3, then the virtue value would be 9. Virtue value should be between 2 and 18. It will never be 0 or negative. In other words, even at creation, you have a slight bias towards the positive side of yin-yang energy. That is why you're an immortal. Which does mean that anytime you increase your attributes, you have the chance of increasing skill modifiers. And increasing that means virtue can get increased, which means you are that closer to becoming a stronger immortal. I like how it trickles down like that.
Yeah.
Now,
It also means you're that much closer to have within your blood of kings.
One of these days I'll have to dig up the Highlander the Quickening TTRPG, which has no relation to the second shitty-ass movie. But
How about to the animated series?
I'm fine with the animated series except for the PC and Jaguar game that was based off it. Yes, a Jaguar game.
Fair enough.
Then again, the first problem with it being a Jaguar game is that you're playing a Jaguar.
True enough.
And
now, my best and clearest recollection of the Highlander movie, I don't know if this is true for other people, is just Clancy Brown, character actor Clancy Brown, kind of growling, "Highlander," whenever he's kind of by himself and pondering things.
Not so much, but Clancy Brown does have plenty of moments of being Clancy Brown.
Yep.
Then we have Sean Connery being Sean Connery.
Yeah.
I'm not Spanish, I'm Egyptian. But although I feel like the design of his character in that is peak genre mixing, because you have a guy dressing like a Spaniard, talking in his normal accent, and wielding a katana. And anyways, so endurance values as mentioned are fortitude, destiny number, and willpower. Fortitude is physique plus 3. Note that you use the physique ability itself, not the modifier.
Hmm.
The destiny number is determined by your virtue value. So what we saw earlier with virtue value, that determines the destiny number, and also determines your additional lifespan, and it can get ridiculous.
Yeah. Get up to 243 plus, and you have an infinite lifespan.
Mm-hmm.
Just a bit.
For now, you don't need to worry about additional lifespan, just the destiny modifier. So if virtue is 1 to 8, destiny number is 1. 9 to 17, 2, and it goes upwards until you get all the way up to 243 at a destiny number of 7. Now, your willpower is the same as your character's will, so 2 through 12. And these can increase as you gain experience. This is tied to your ability scores. In each skill value and endurance value, next to where you write these values, there's a part labeled increase. There should be 2 ability score names and parentheses. However, destiny number doesn't have this. The 2 ability scores listed are the ones that will affect the increase in each value and endurance value. So you'd circle the name of the ability score that has the higher value. If they're the same, then you circle both of them. Then write in the value of the higher ability score in the parentheses. What you write is the numerical value of the ability score itself, not the skill value modifier. This is something that we'll get into much later when it comes to character growth, loss, and retirement. And when it comes to age and lifespan, this has its own setup. So again, by accumulating virtue, you can ultimately obtain true eternal life. So first, you'd roll 2 die 3 times and note the results. From the 3 values obtained, remove the smallest one. Then multiply the remaining 2 values. You should have a result between 4 and 144. And this becomes your natural lifespan. If you have not accumulated any virtuous deeds, you will die when you reach this age. Though the virtue value will multiply that. At first, it's not going to multiply it as much because you're not going to have a very high virtue value at first. But as you increase that destiny number, the lifespan increases by virtue times 1, times 3, times 9, times 27, times 81, times 243, and then infinite.
Mm.
Well, if you're on the lower end of that spectrum of having only 4 years left to live, you might be in a hurry to see what you can do to extend your lifespan.
Yep. So you would take the number that you rolled from the natural lifespan, then add an additional lifespan based on the destiny number, which of course is based on virtue. There's also a spot for lifespan damage because even that can be attacked. And of course, total lifespan is original lifespan plus any additional from virtue. You also have to determine the age of awakening. This is when you stop becoming a normal human and become an immortal. You'd roll 2d minus 2. Then roll 1 die and multiply the result by the number you obtained earlier. So 2d minus 2 times 1d, which should give you a range from 0 to 60. This is the age at which your awakening occurred. If the result is 0, which can happen if your initial 2 die is double ones, that means you awoke immediately after birth.
Okay.
Mhm.
Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
It just means instead of getting it later in life, you were born an immortal.
Ah.
Oh. But you do serve a master from the time that you have your awakening until you start setting out on adventures. This is what's known as the cave service years. You can assign any numbers you like to it, except for negative years, obviously. But the maximum has to be less than total lifespan minus age of awakening. And after that, they do have acquisition of immortal treasures, so a few treasures that you could get. But getting these, it takes a certain amount of time and is dependent on your cave lineage. And what you can acquire 2 or more of the same immortal treasure, but you need the same amount of service time. So this is why it would be tempting to add more service time, because the more that you add, the bigger budget you have for getting immortal treasures.
Mhm.
So for example, 5 escapes fire style. You have the Master's Written Note, 9 months. Mount Wind Fire Wheel, 9 years. A Quick Warm Stove, 9 months. And the Flame Tipped Spear, 9 years. I do like that when it comes to these sort of magic items, it's giving the notion that yeah, you can get them right at the start, but getting them takes time. And
Makes you wonder.
Oh, go ahead.
I'm just gonna say it makes you wonder if there's some kind of system for like training arcs, or just like downtime system for like spending months or years trying to work to get your treasures.
These would be treasures that you'd start with, and it would be a few years.
Yeah.
It would be a few years before downtime rules would really become a thing in tabletop. At least in the way that we understand them now.
Yeah.
But in order to use immortal treasures, you need dexterity. They do say it's advisable to limit the number of immortal treasures to that of half your dexterity rounded up. Now, of course, you can get weapons that are not immortal treasures, but they're not going to have any special rules to them. Which also means that there isn't such a thing as a +1 longsword. Or a regular longsword and a masterwork longsword to an immortal are basically the same thing.
What matters is if it has a history.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep. After that, you can pick particular hobbies. I do like they put in a translator note about Sugoroku, a board game similar to backgammon as it's described, as well as the related ability scores. We do have dexterity being a god stat, kind of, but not in the same way. You can only choose one hobby. After that, you write down the hobby and its related ability score on the sheet. And then, obviously, then is the whole concept of bringing the character to life. You know, the finishing touches, and one little reintroduction of Ryu and Yuko's Helping Hand Theater, and a depiction of the Wind Fire Wheels. In Immortal Treasure, the 5 escapes fire style. While spinning, it emits flames and can fly through the sky faster than birds.
Yeah, we saw the main character like riding those earlier in the illustrations, I recall.
Yep. But with that said, that brings us to the end of the introduction and immortal creation for Ouka Houshin. So I know there were a lot of moving parts when we got into character creation, but what did you guys think of what you've been seeing so far?
I'm liking it.
Yeah, I'm into this. Well, it's partially the excitement of like exploring a genre that I'm not familiar with, and partially the fact that it's about, there's some interesting systems at play here and some interesting things to think about as far as character morality that I normally wouldn't might not normally be considering. Also, one thing I will note though is that it seems like you really need to understand exactly what all of the you have to have a good understanding of what all the stats do and sort of how you got there. So for people who are a bit, who have dyscalculia or a bit math phobic, it might be a little bit of a turnoff for them. Not a problem for me, but to each their own.
Mm-hmm. And there is a nice little guideline when it comes to the innate attributes. That does make things a little bit easier. Plus, somebody on the Sword World Discord had made a in the Google Doc where we have the translation, had made a spreadsheet version of the character sheet. Which I'd have to double check if that spreadsheet auto calculates. I don't think it does. So let me see. Okay, come on. So I'm gonna have to make a. And it actually does.
Oh. Neat.
This particular sheet was made by Aquid. So you have to make your own copy of it in Drive, but that does make things a little bit easier. And
it's always nice when something gets automated.
Yeah.
I do think some aspects of character creation we're going to be coming back to. Though this is one of those classic cases that you saw a lot of in the 80s and 90s of some parts of the mechanics not exactly being unified. We especially see this with how attributes are set up. But
there seems to be a variety of. I haven't been able to parse out exactly how this all goes together yet, but maybe when we get into action checks and like Immortal Arts, it'll make more sense.
Mm-hmm. I do know that we are dealing with the fact that this is still a 2d6 aim high. Aim high. Box cutters. Not box cutters. Boxcars are really good. Snake eyes are really bad. But in about a week's time, we will get into action checks. Because let me see how I had set it up. So next week, when we come back to it, we'll be going into action checks and combat. I will admit I do like how the setup kind of cascades. One particular stat cascades down to another one and to another one. So increasing some of them is going to increase the rest.
Yeah, agreed. You know, that's you don't often see that, and it's seems as long as you remember what you're supposed to, you know, what increases what, you should see some nice progressions there.
Hmm. Oh yeah, and I think we're off to a very interesting start. Uh, the thing that's going to be a deciding factor is how immortal arts are handled. But so far, so good. It is kind of funny that we made parallels with World of Darkness throughout this, though. I'd say if I'm using World of
Yeah.
Darkness, the best parallel is probably going to be Mage because of how ridiculous Mage can get.
Oh, certainly.
But I also appreciate that
Although I
they.
don't,
Good.
I'm just gonna say I don't think it's gonna be quite as freeform as Mage.
No,
But yeah.
at least not at first. And I do appreciate that when it comes to the whole acquisition of virtue thing, it means it means you're not just doing, oh, you're a bunch of randos or you're meeting in a tavern. No, you are immortal heroes. And you need to be doing heroic things.
Dang it, that means I need to be part of a sect. Shoot.
But that being said, that will do it for this particular episode. Like I said, we'll be back here next week as we go further into Ouka Houshin. And tomorrow will be the continued look into Magic Punk. So that should be a fun
Yay.
experience. But until then, on behalf of the good brothers present and not present, my name is Mildra. I am your gaming monk. Stay fucking frosty, everybody.
Take care.
See ya.